On the day of the engagement banquet, I changed into the wedding dress my mother had been preparing for 3 years. But suddenly everyone in the manor knelt before me, crying, "Miss, you cannot go through with this marriage." I thought they couldn't bear to see me marry away, until grandmother overturned the banquet table, father tore up the marriage contract, and brother threw my childhood friend out of the manor gates. Even the old dog in the courtyard barked at me incessantly. Only then did I understand. They didn't cherish me. They wanted to destroy me. Later I learned that everyone in the Marquis Manor except me had been reborn. They remembered that in the previous life, after I married my childhood friend, I rose to great heights while the Marquis Manor was raided and the entire family executed. On this joyous day, even the sunlight felt warm. My name is Jiang Jixia, the only legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Jing'an Manor. Today is the engagement banquet between me and my childhood friend Lu Jingren. 3 years ago, my mother, Lady Liu, personally sewed my wedding dress, every stitch and thread carrying a loving mother's devotion. At this moment, I am wearing this crimson brocade robe, with twin lotus flowers embroidered in gold thread shimmering on the hem like flowing sunset clouds. The person in the bronze mirror had smiling eyes, her heart full of joy. Jingren and I grew up together. Though he came from a humble family, he is a renowned scholar in the capital city and a top candidate for the imperial examination's top honor. Our marriage was once a love story envied by everyone in the capital city. The maid Shaolian placed the last hairpin in my hair and said cheerfully, "Miss, you look so beautiful today. When young Master Lu sees you, he'll surely be stunned." I smiled shyly, my heart filled with the purest longing and sweetness of a daughter about to be married. Everything should be at its best. I lifted my skirt, stepping with a heart full of joy, and walked out of my boudoir. But the scene in the front hall plunged me into an icy abyss. There were no guests filling the doors, no pleasant music, only my entire family from Marquis Manor, all kneeling in unison on the cold stone slabs. Grandmother, father, mother, brother. Their expressions were mournful, eyes brimming with tears, as if they weren't celebrating a joyous occasion but attending a funeral. I froze in place, the smile on my face stiffening bit by bit. Jixia, Mother Liu, crawled forward on her knees, clutching my skirt desperately, tears streaming down like rain. "This marriage cannot happen." I thought I had heard wrong, Mother. "What are you saying, Father?" Marquis Dingen Zhang Yunshan, a man who had always been dignified, now had bloodshot eyes and a hoarse voice. "Listen to your mother, this marriage must be called off immediately." My heart sank abruptly, and I instinctively searched for Lu Jingren's figure. He stood not far away, also dressed in wedding attire, but the smile on his face had long been replaced by shock and confusion. "Uncle, aunt, why is this?" Lu Jingren stepped forward, cupping his hands in salute, his tone still composed. "If Jingren has done something wrong, please tell me clearly." I thought they couldn't bear to see me marry away, expressing their reluctance in this manner. I steadied myself, wanting to speak words of comfort. But the next moment, grandmother suddenly stood up. Her face was full of malice, completely different from her usual kindness. She rushed to the main table in one stride and swept her arm across, sending all the delicacies and fine wines crashing to the floor. Crash! The sharp, piercing sound of shattering porcelain felt like it was breaking my heart along with it. "Monster. It is all because of this monster." Grandmother pointed at Lu Jingren, her voice shrill. "He will destroy our Marquis Manor, destroy all of us." Father didn't stop her. Instead, he snatched our marriage certificate from the ceremonial official's hands and tore it with both hands. With a rip, the token symbolizing our lifelong union was torn to shreds. "Father," I screamed. Red paper fragments flew everywhere like a snowfall of despair. Brother Jiang Yunzhou was even more direct. He grabbed Lu Jingren by the collar and his fist came down mercilessly. "Get lost, you low-born bastard. How dare you covet my sister? Brother, stop it." I tried to rush over like a madwoman, but Mother held me back tightly. "Jixia, be good. We're all doing this for your own good," Mother cried in my ear, her strength surprisingly powerful. Lu Jingren was beaten until blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, but his spine remained straight. His gaze pierced through the chaotic crowd and landed firmly on me. In those eyes there was shock, there was heartbreak, and there was also a hint of something searching that I couldn't understand. I was forcibly dragged by the servants, watching helplessly as my beloved, on my family's joyous day, was beaten out the gate by my most respected elder brother, dragged like a dead dog. Even the old yellow dog I'd raised since it was small barked at me furiously, baring its teeth as if I was some mortal enemy. The gate slammed shut with a bang, cutting off Lu Jingren's final gaze toward me, and severing all my hope. I was surrounded by everyone, or rather, held captive standing amid the chaos. The magnificent wedding dress I wore had somehow been splattered with wine stains, cold and sticky. I looked at these few closest family members before me. Their faces showed not a trace of guilt, only a kind of relieved gratitude and undisguised indifference toward me. In that moment I finally understood. They didn't cherish me, they wanted to destroy me. My wedding dress was roughly torn off and replaced with plain everyday clothes. I was locked in my own boudoir, the windows sealed with wooden bars, two sturdy matrons guarding the door, as if watching over the most serious criminal. The embroidery tower that once held a young woman's romantic dreams had overnight become my cage. I sat before the vanity, looking at my deathly pale face and disheveled hair in the bronze mirror, as if still trapped in an absurd nightmare. At dinner time, the door opened. Father, mother, grandmother, and brother, the whole family walked in together. Father Jiang Yanshan heavily placed the food box on the table with a dull thud. From today on, you will stay in your room and reflect on your mistakes. Without my permission, you are not to step 1 foot outside this door. His tone carried not a trace of warmth, as if he were reprimanding an irrelevant servant. I lifted my eyes, my gaze sweeping over each one of them. Why? My voice was dry and hoarse. Grandmother let out a cold snort and tapped her cane on the ground. There is no why. We are your family. Would we harm you? That Lu Jingren is nothing but trouble. Staying away from him is the right path. Trouble. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, revealing a mocking smile. Yesterday you were all praising him, saying he had a bright future and would be a good son-in-law for the Jiang family. Today, how did he suddenly become trouble? Brother Jiang Yunzhou impatiently cut me off. Enough nonsense. When we tell you to break it off, you break it off. A poor scholar. Throwing him out would be getting off easy. Not taking his life is already the Marquis Manner's mercy. His words were like cold needles piercing into my heart. I looked toward Mother, who had been silent all along. Mother Liu's eyes were red-rimmed as she picked up a bowl of bird's nest porridge and held it out to me, gently coaxing, Jixia, be good, drink the porridge first, we all have our reasons. Difficulties? I stared at her, asking word by word. What kind of difficulties would make you humiliate Jingren, like that at the engagement banquet in front of all the servants? Tear up my marriage contract and destroy my reputation? My questioning made Mother's face turn pale, her hands holding the bowl, trembling slightly. She avoided my gaze, only repeating, "It is for your own good. Everything is for your own good. You'll understand later." That phrase again. Every one of them said it was for my own good, yet everything they did was pushing me into the abyss. This conversation ultimately ended on bad terms. They left the food behind and turned to leave coldly, as if even looking at me one more time disgusted them. The door was locked again. I didn't touch the food, just sat quietly, going over everything that happened today again and again. Grandmother's crazed curses, father's resolute tearing, brother's vicious fists, and mother's seemingly heartbroken but actually cold and hard confinement. Too abnormal. Overnight, everything turned upside down. This was definitely not a spur-of-the-moment decision. What exactly did they find out? Or rather, what did they foresee? Late at night, I was awakened by the faint sound of arguing outside the door. I quietly walked to the door and looked out through the crack. The two old women guarding the door probably thought I was sound asleep and were talking in lowered voices. The old lady today, really, scared me to death. Exactly, and the Marquis and the young master too. They looked like they wanted to eat someone. I went to the old madam's courtyard this afternoon to deliver calming soup. Guess what I heard? Another servant woman said mysteriously. What? I heard the old madam muttering, saying something about previous life, and something about entire family executed. It made my hair stand on end. Previous life. What kind of talk is that? Could she be possessed? Who knows? But today, the old madam did point at young Master Lu and say he would bring death to our entire family. Could it be true? I couldn't hear clearly what they said after that. My head was buzzing with only those 3 words echoing over and over: previous life. A term so absurd, yet so terrifying. I leaned against the cold door panel, trembling uncontrollably. A terrifying thought grew wildly in my mind. Could it be they all had the same dream? A nightmare about a previous life, and in that dream I married Lu Jingren, ultimately leading to the downfall of Marky's manor. This thought pierced my mind like a poisonous thorn, keeping me sleepless all night. Strategic commentary, the first step of cognitive awakening. Discovering system vulnerabilities, the most exquisite reversal when everyone thinks they are the prophet. The only one who doesn't know the script becomes the most clear-headed person. Dimensional reduction, strike of information asymmetry. They know the result, but not the cause. They remember who harmed them, but forget what they did. They think changing her choice equals changing fate, when in reality their choices themselves are the root cause of the tragedy. Zhang Jixia's first victory, she discovered the rules of the game. When you know what cards your opponent holds, you can start making your moves. On the morning of the second day, Mother Liu came again. She personally carried a bowl of ginseng soup, dismissed the attendants, sat by my bedside, wearing that loving smile I knew all too well on her face. Jixia, didn't sleep well last night. Look at you, your eyes are all red from staying up. As she spoke, she reached out to caress my cheek. I instinctively turned my head away. Mother's hand froze in midair, and the smile on her face also stiffened for a moment. Still angry with Mother, she sighed and handed over the soup bowl. Drink the soup first. Mother watched over the low flame all night to make this for you. If it were before, I would definitely have been moved to tears. But now I only felt that this bowl of ginseng soup and this face of a loving mother were both full of hypocritical calculations. I didn't take it, only raised my head and looked at her quietly. Mother, I only want to know one thing. Go ahead. Did you all have the same dream? I asked directly, my eyes fixed unblinkingly on her reaction. Mother's pupils suddenly contracted. This subtle change did not escape my eyes. She quickly composed herself and asked with feigned confusion, "What dream? I don't know what you are talking about." "A dream about the previous life," I continued, pressing. "In the dream, I married Brother Jingren, and then our Dingen Marquee Manor was raided and everyone was executed, right?" Crash! The soup bowl in Mother's hand slipped and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. The scalding ginseng soup splashed onto her skirt hem and near my feet, but she seemed completely unaware. Her face turned deathly pale, her lips trembling as she looked at me with eyes full of terror and shock, as if looking at an evil ghost crawling out of hell. How could you know?" she shrieked. In that instant, I understood everything. The idle chatter of the gatekeeper woman wasn't groundless. Grandmother's madness, father's ruthlessness, brother's violence, all had the most absurd yet most reasonable explanation. They had been reborn. Or rather, they had returned with memories of their previous life. In those memories, I married Lu Jingren. He rose to great heights, and the Marquee Manor met with the fate of complete annihilation. So they wanted to ruin my marriage. Not because they didn't love me, but because they loved themselves more. They want to exchange my happiness for their own safety and wealth. I, Zhang Jixia, became the sacrifice that had to be offered up. Having figured all this out, my heart felt like it was submerged in ice water from the coldest winter days, freezing inch by inch until it became completely rigid. Not a trace of warmth remained. Mother was still clutching my arm in panic, explaining incoherently. "Jixia, listen to me. It is true. We all remembered. In the last life, it was because of you. You married that ungrateful wretch, and after he became chief minister, the first thing he did was come after our Marquee Manor. Our entire family died under the guillotine." She cried her heart out, as if she had returned to that bloody execution ground, but I was unusually calm. I looked at her and asked softly, "Mother, if in the last life I had married Brother Jingren, and Marquee Manor still faced total annihilation, but Brother Jingren protected me and let me survive unharmed, in this life would you still stop me?" Mother's crying stopped abruptly. She stared at me blankly, opened her mouth, but couldn't say a single word. Her silence was the loudest answer. Right, how could she agree? In her view, as long as Marquis Manor was destroyed, whether I, her daughter, lived or died, what did it matter? My death would be a natural sacrifice. My survival, on the other hand, would be a kind of betrayal to them. I smiled softly. As I smiled, tears fell down my face. There is no greater sorrow than a dead heart. I reached out, wiped away my tears, then picked up the tea on the table that had long gone cold and drank it all in one gulp. Fine, I said. I understand now. Seeing that I was no longer resisting, Mother seemed relieved and quickly said, Jixia, it is good that you've come around. Don't worry, your father and I will definitely find you an even better match. No need, I interrupted her, my voice so calm it didn't have a single ripple. My marriage I'll decide for myself. Mother's expression changed again. I paid her no more attention and walked straight to the vanity, picked up the wooden comb, and stroke by stroke methodically combed through my disheveled long hair. The person in the mirror had eyes so cold and unfamiliar that even I felt afraid. The debts from my past life I don't remember, but the grudge from this life I'll never forget. After Mother left, I immediately called for my personal maid, Xiao Lian. Xiao Lian, I had saved her from human traffickers, and she was utterly loyal to me, Xiao Lian. I looked at her, my eyes resolute. Help me find a way to get a message out, deliver it to Jishi Hall on the west side of the city, and give it to a shop assistant named Wu. Xiao Lian looked worried. Miss, things are so tight right now, no matter what, it has to be delivered. I took out a jade hairpin of pure green from the hidden compartment of my makeup box and pressed it into her hand. Tell him it is time to repay the debt from the past. I need him to help me with 3 things. First, find out where my father has driven the Liu family to, and whether brother Jingren is safe. Second, help me sell off that estate in the suburbs and those few shops under my name as quickly as possible for cash. Don't leave a single cent behind. Third, I paused, a flash of ruthlessness crossing my eyes. Go investigate who that dear brother of mine has been associating with lately. My family wants me to be an obedient sacrifice to quietly offer myself up for their grand cause of rebirth. But they forgot. Even a cornered rabbit will bite. Xiao Lian received my orders, though her face paled somewhat, a determined light hid in her eyes. I had saved her from human traffickers, so her loyalty was beyond question. That jade hairpin was a gift from grandmother at my coming-of-age ceremony, worth a considerable sum, enough to serve as both token and travel funds. I watched Xiao Lian disappear beyond the doorway, the coldness in my heart replaced by a faint glimmer of hope. I was trapped within these 4 walls, but my eyes and ears could extend outward through her. My chamber remained a prison. 2 matrons took turns standing guard, leaving no opening. They followed the family's orders, guarding not just against my escape, but against any contact I might have with the outside world. But I knew that they were merely servants, after all. With enough of a price, there would always be a way through. Over the next few days, I acted unusually calm. No crying, no fuss, and no more questions about the truth of that previous life. I started eating on my own initiative. Though the food was tasteless, at least I could maintain my strength. I even picked up my embroidery hoop again, pretending to focus on needlework as if I'd already accepted my fate. This change satisfied my family. Mother Liu brought ginseng soup every day, repeating those tired clichés about how it was, for my own good. I just listened, occasionally nodding obediently, neither arguing nor responding. She thought I'd finally come around, and the worry on her face gradually gave way to relief. Father Zhang Yunshan also came once. He watched me embroidering with my head down. Silent for a long while, then said only one thing: a daughter of Marquis Manor shouldn't be like this. Then he turned and left. I could clearly see the complexity in his eyes. It wasn't regret over my marriage, but remorse for his miscalculation in the previous life. Brother Zhang Yunzhou was even more smug. He even had someone deliver a travel journal saying it was to relieve my boredom. The journal depicted scenic landscapes and local customs, as if hinting that my life should be this kind of peaceful existence, far from worldly troubles. He thought he'd won, thought I was completely trapped by the fate he'd crafted for me. They all thought I was a discarded chess piece that could be manipulated at will. But they forgot, on this chessboard, there is never just one way to move. The twin lotus flowers on my embroidery frame gradually transformed into a sharp dagger under the dim candlelight, hidden beneath the brocade unnoticed by anyone. And I, during my long imprisonment, carefully pondered every fragment about the previous life, trying to piece together the truth that had been deliberately concealed. Lu Jingren became the Grand Secretary, and the Marquis Manor was raided and exterminated. There must be deeper reasons behind all this. My heart, in the silent boudoir, gradually became cold and resolute. I, Zhang Jixia, will never become their sacrificial offering. Time flew by, and half a month passed. Xiaolian finally brought back news. She cleverly avoided the guards during her usual shopping trips and successfully delivered the message to Ah Wu, the assistant at Jishi Hall. Ah Wu lived up to expectations and sent back 3 thick letters. I anxiously opened the first letter. The letter said that the Liu family was driven out of capital city overnight by the Dingen Marquis Manor on the day of the engagement banquet, leaving behind only some property and a few dilapidated houses. Lu Jingren's father, Lord Liu, was already on the verge of retiring and returning to his hometown, and now his reputation was completely ruined, with likely no possibility of returning to office. As for Lu Jingren, he did not return to his hometown with his family. After being beaten by Jiang Yunzhou, he was quietly taken away by a mysterious figure in capital city. That mysterious figure, Ah Wu, couldn't find out their exact identity, only knew they were an extremely powerful noble who acted low-key and was unfathomably deep. Lu Jingren's current whereabouts are unknown. It has only been reported that he wasn't injured, but where exactly he is remains a mystery. A weight lifted from my heart, only to be violently suspended again. Brother Jingren is safe, which brings me some comfort. But who is that mysterious noble? Why would they pay attention to Lu Jingren? Does this have anything to do with the entangled fate from my previous life? I quickly tore open the second letter. The letter said that the estate and shops on the city outskirts had already been secretly sold for cash according to my instructions. Ah Wu handled things cleanly and efficiently. This sum of silver is temporarily kept by him, ready for my disposal at any time. With this money, I now have some confidence. Whether it is greasing palms or managing things later on, at least I won't be completely defenseless. Next, I tore open the third letter. The contents of this letter made my originally cold gaze completely freeze into ice. Ah Wu had thoroughly investigated my brother Jiang Yunzhou's recent movements. He indeed had close dealings with some shady characters, and among them one name appeared prominently on the letter: Crown Prince's study companion, Zhou Zisheng. Zhou Zicheng is the study companion of the current Crown Prince Xiao Chen, always known for his deep scheming and extremely calculating nature. He has little interaction with my brother Jiang Yunzhou, and they usually keep their distance. However, in the memories of the previous life, Lu Jingren rose to great heights precisely because of his outstanding talent and the Crown Prince's high regard. After the Crown Prince ascended the throne, Lu Jingren was even exceptionally promoted to Chief Minister. So, my brother Jiang Yunzhou's current dealings with Zhou Zikeng are definitely not coincidental. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to obstruct Lu Jingren's interactions with the Crown Prince? Or more directly, trying to use the Crown Prince's hand to cut off Lu Jingren's official career, or even his life? My family, in order to protect themselves, will stop at nothing. Their memories from the previous life are their golden finger for scheming in this life, and also their greatest weakness. I slowly put away the 3 letters, cold light flashing in my eyes. Since they can manipulate me with their memories from the previous life, then I will also use the clues in my hands to stir up these deep waters. Strategic commentary, the second layer of the game. The art of turning the tables, the most exquisite counter-logic. When your opponent thinks you've already surrendered, every act of your compliance is part of the setup. Zhang Jixia's 3-step approach: resource integration, selling off family assets equals cutting off economic dependence on the Marquis Manor information gathering. Investigating Lu Jingren's whereabouts equals confirming whether allies are safe. Vulnerability identification, tracking Jiang Yunzhou's movements equals finding the opponent's fatal weakness. The reborn's second fatal mistake They think changing key nodes can change fate, but they don't realize when you use memories to interfere with reality. Every move you make is providing intelligence to your opponent. Zhang Yunzhou and Zhou Zisheng's collusion equals the biggest flaw, because this proves they not only want to destroy Lu Jingren, but also want to take the initiative, and taking the initiative means exposure. Xiaolian brought a message saying that besides these 3 letters, Awu also brought a sentence. The kindness of the past is as great as a mountain. Awu is willing to go through fire and water for Miss. My heart stirred slightly. Back then, saving Awu was just a casual act. His mother was seriously ill. He was desperate. I felt sorry for him, so I gave him some silver. I never expected that this unintentional act would become my lifeline at this moment. I began to carefully study the 3 letters. Lu Jingren was taken away by a mysterious noble, and my brother colluded with Zhou Zikeng. There must be a connection between these. Zhou Zikeng is the Crown Prince's study companion, and his every move represents the Crown Prince's attitude. The fact that my brother Zhang Yunzhou can contact Zhou Zikeng shows that the Zhang family's influence in the court is deeper than I originally thought. However, in my previous life, the Marquis Manor was raided and the entire family executed. What does this mean? It means that no matter how deep their influence, in the end they couldn't stop Lu Jingren's rise, couldn't stop the Emperor's determination. I need to find that balance point, find their fatal weakness. In the following days, I pretended to be even more disheartened, and even began a hunger strike. This made my family completely lower their guard. They thought I had finally been broken by their good intentions, and was no longer the Zhang Jixia who dared to resist. Mother tearfully urged me to eat every day, and grandmother even came to see me twice, which was unprecedented. She brought me some pastries, and although her eyes still carried wariness, her tone had softened considerably. I still didn't talk much, only nodding occasionally, which made them believe even more that my heart had turned to ashes. In the dead of night, I would take out Awu's letters and ponder them repeatedly under candlelight. I began using embroidery needles to carefully sketch a map of the capital city on silk, marking important locations: the Marquis Manor, Jishi Hall, the Lu family's old residence, and the Crown Prince's mansion. My gaze ultimately fell on several small alleys beside the Crown Prince's mansion, and a royal villa outside the capital city. I knew that relying on Awu alone wouldn't be enough to escape this predicament. I needed more eyes and ears, more help. I began actively chatting with the old women guarding me. At first, they were indifferent to me, but as my hunger strike weakened my body, my tone also became softer. I acted like a harmless young lady from a noble family, only caring about trivial household matters, occasionally sighing and saying, "I wonder how the Lu family is doing now." I probed carefully, not missing any subtle expression. Until one day, I discovered that an old woman named Li, whenever I mentioned the Lu family, would show a barely perceptible trace of concern in her eyes. She was a distant relative of the Lu family, and after marrying into the Marquis Manor had been working there ever since. She had some old affection for the Lu family, especially for Lu Jingren's mother. A flash of light crossed my mind. Old woman Lai would be my first hidden pawn. I stopped my hunger strike and instead began actively conversing with old woman Lai, discussing trivial matters, occasionally mentioning old stories about the Lu family as if by chance. I needed her sympathy, needed her mouth. I waited, waiting for the right opportunity to slowly spread my plan through her. An invisible game of chess was quietly unfolding in the inner chambers of the Marquis' manor. The opportunity came soon enough. That afternoon, the weather turned slightly cool, and grandmother sent someone to deliver a newly made autumn robe. The one who brought the clothes happened to be old Lady Li. She placed the robe at the head of my bed and gave her usual advice: "Miss, you should at least eat something. Your health is what matters." I looked at her, my eyes dim, and said in a weak voice, "Mama Li, you've watched me grow up too. Tell me, did I really do something wrong?" Old lady lied. "What are you saying?" "Miss, you have the kindest heart, but they all say that Brother Jingren is a disaster, that he'll bring ruin to our entire family." I covered my mouth with a handkerchief and began coughing softly, my eyes reddening as well. "I just don't understand. How does a perfectly fine person become a monster overnight?" My words were filled with grievance and confusion like a pitiful soul abandoned by the whole world. A trace of sympathy flashed across old Lady Lee's face. She hesitated for a moment, then lowered her voice and said, "Miss Somethings, this old servant doesn't dare speak too much about. It is just that Mrs. Liu is a truly good person. Back when my family fell on hard times, it was she who helped us. Young Master Liu is also a good child. He would never do such ungrateful things." This was exactly the line I'd been waiting for. I grabbed her hand, as if grasping the last straw, looking at her with teary eyes. "Mama Lee, I trust you. I just want to know how Brother Jingran is doing. That day he was beaten so badly. I really can't stop worrying." My tears fell one by one, dripping onto the back of old Lady Lee's hand, scalding hot. She immediately became flustered and hurriedly said, "Miss, don't cry. Don't cry. Young Master Liu is fine. This old servant heard from the purchasing staff outside that he was rescued by someone and is doing well now." Really, I raised my head, hope bursting forth in my eyes. Absolutely true. I seemed to breathe a huge sigh of relief, then became worried again. But my parents and brother, they seem determined to put him to death. I am afraid they'll make another move against him. Hearing this, old Lady Lee's expression also became grave. She naturally knew the methods of the Marquis and the young master. I struck while the iron was hot, pulling out a small pouch from under my pillow and pressing it into her hand. Inside the pouch was a pair of pure gold earrings I had prepared long ago. "Mama Lee, I know this is difficult for you. I am not asking you to do anything. I only ask that when you go out to purchase things, if you hear any news about the Liu family, or hear that my brother is plotting something again, could you let me know?" I pleaded. "I just want peace of mind. As long as I know he is still alive, I ask for nothing more." Old Lady Lee clutched the heavy pouch, then looked at my pale and pitiful face. The last line of defense in her heart crumbled. She gritted her teeth, tucked the pouch into her bosom, and nodded heavily. "Miss, rest assured, this old servant will do her best." Watching her departing figure, I slowly sat up straight, the weakness and tears on my face vanishing without a trace in an instant. The first stone had been cast. Next, let's see how much of a ripple this stagnant water can be stirred into. Ever since old Lady Lee became my hidden pawn, news from within the manor flowed endlessly to my ears. That dear brother of mine, Jiang Yunzhou, has indeed been getting extremely close with Zhou Zicheng lately. On the surface, they exchange poetry and wine, but in secret they're plotting something big. Old Lady Lai heard from the manor's steward's idle chatter that brother has been mobilizing Marquis Manor's connections everywhere, collecting evidence of crimes against Liu Jingran. Even baseless trivial matters are being exaggerated and compiled into records, and Zhou Zicheng has promised to present this evidence to the Crown Prince at the right moment. Their purpose is crystal clear: to completely nail Liu Jingran to the pillar of shame before he can even emerge, cutting off all his paths to an official career. What a move to pull the rug out from under him. I sat by the window, clutching a black chess piece in my hand, my knuckles turning slightly white from the force. They thought they held the script, that they could manipulate others' fates at will. But they forgot that fate. This game of chess is the most unpredictable of all. On a sunny and warm afternoon, Mother came again. This time, she didn't come alone. Behind her followed a lavishly dressed woman, none other than Madame Wang from the household of the current Minister of Personnel. I sneered inwardly, so they're looking for another family to marry me off to. "Shixia, come quickly and greet Madame Wang." Mother's face was all smiles as she enthusiastically pulled me over. I obediently curtsied, then sat quietly to the side, eyes downcast, silent and wordless, like a soulless puppet. Madame Wang looked me over from head to toe, seemingly dissatisfied with my dispirited appearance, but for the sake of Mother's face, she still smiled and said, "I've long heard that the young lady of the Jiang family is gentle and virtuous. Seeing you today, your reputation is well deserved indeed." Her gaze carried the scrutiny of someone appraising merchandise. Mother quickly chimed in. "Yes, our Jixia is the most obedient and sensible, Madame Wang. You see, your second young master and our Jixia are similar in age, and our families are well matched too." They chatted back and forth, the topic centered on me, yet it seemed completely unrelated to me. I listened to them discussing how much the betrothal gifts should be, whether the horoscopes matched, as if I were watching a play that had nothing to do with me. So it turned out in their eyes I was not only a sacrifice that could be offered up, but also a bargaining chip that could be traded for benefits at any time. In my previous life, Lu Jingren was probably seen as a thorn in their side because he couldn't bring such benefits to the Marquis's manor. How cold and thin their love was, how selfish. It wasn't until Madame Wang took her leave that Mother came over, took my hand and said earnestly, "Jixia, although the second young master of the Wang family's scholarly achievements can't compare to Lu Jingren's, he has the advantage of a distinguished family background. If you marry into their family, you'll enjoy endless wealth and glory for the rest of your life. This is the best destination for a woman." I raised my head and looked at her face written all over with "It is for your own good," and suddenly felt it was utterly ridiculous. "Mother," I asked softly, "if I marry into the Wang family, and in the future the Wang family commits a crime and faces execution of the entire household, would you also tell me to hurry up and get a divorce?" Mother's face turned pale in an instant. She hadn't expected me to say such words, pointed at me, trembling all over with anger. You child, how have you become so unreasonable?" I slowly stood up, brushed off her hand, walked to the window, and looked at the small patch of sky framed by the high walls outside. "I am not being unreasonable." My voice was soft, yet carried a bone-chilling coldness. "I've just seen clearly that in your hearts. I was never a daughter, just a chess piece that could be discarded at any time." Mother was left speechless by my word, and finally just threw out a "do as you please" before storming off in anger with a flick of her sleeve. The door slammed shut heavily, and the room returned to deathly silence. I looked at the withered leaves falling outside the window, my eyes without the slightest ripple. An abandoned piece, if it wants to survive, can only become the one who moves the pieces. I need a letter that can be delivered to Lu Jingren's hands, and make him believe without a doubt that it was written by me personally. This letter cannot be sent out by Xiao Lian or Granny Li, since brother has already begun plotting against Lu Jingren. The surveillance inside and outside the manor will only get stricter. Any carelessness could lead to my eternal damnation. I turned my gaze toward the old yellow dog in the manor that barked madly at me. Its name is Asai, and I've raised it since it was small. The memories from my past life made it see me as an enemy too. Every time I approach the courtyard, it bares its teeth and snarls as if it wants to tear me apart. But I remember what Asai loves to eat most are the little meat patties I make by hand with minced meat and rice flour. I started begging the kitchen to send me some raw meat and rice flour, just saying I was bored and wanted to make some snacks to pass the time. Mother thought I had lost heart and was starting to indulge in these boudoir trifles, so she didn't stop me much. I made the meat patties extremely fragrant, but didn't give them to it. Every afternoon, I would stand by the window and fan the aroma of the meat patties toward the courtyard. At first, Asai barked at me even more fiercely. But gradually, under the temptation of the aroma, its barking changed from anger to a whimper tinged with longing. Animal instinct would ultimately triumph over those illusory, past-life memories. Finally, one evening, when I took out the meat patties again, Asai didn't bark, just wagged its tail and looked at me eagerly. I knew the time had come. I wrote 2 letters. The first was to Wu. I had him use all his connections to find out who exactly that mysterious benefactor who took Lu Jingren away was, and also find a way to deliver the second letter into that benefactor's hands. I was betting that since that benefactor was willing to protect Lu Jingren at such a critical moment, they must value him extremely highly. They would never allow anyone, especially someone close to the Crown Prince, to use such despicable means to destroy a promising talent. The second letter was to Lu Jingren. The content of the letter was simple. I didn't defend myself or complain, just used the handwriting we were once most familiar with to write down a code phrase. There is a loquat tree in the courtyard. Now it has grown tall with a canopy like an umbrella. This is a line from an essay we read together in our childhood. There is another line after it, which he must remember. I also drew a picture. It depicted a bird trapped in a cage, with a bowl of poison placed beside the cage. Finally, I told him that my elder brother was colluding with Zhou Zikang. Intending to frame him with evidence, I urged him to be careful in all matters and never trust anyone lightly. I carefully wrapped the letter I wrote to Lu Jingren in oiled paper, stuffed it into a very small bamboo tube, then firmly tied the bamboo tube to the inside of a size collar. This position was extremely concealed. Unless one searched carefully, it would never be discovered. After finishing all this, I gave it an entire plate of meat pies. That evening, under cover of darkness, I deliberately broke a vase. The loud noise startled the old women guarding the door, and they hurriedly opened the door to check. In that brief moment of chaos, a Siamese dog carrying all my hopes like a yellow streak of lightning darted out through the open doorway in a flash. It knew the layout of the Marquis Manor like the back of its paw, and knew exactly which dog hole led outside the manor. I watched it disappear into the night, my heart leaping into my throat. And at almost the same time, in an extremely secluded residence in the capital city, my elder brother, Zhang Yunzhou, was respectfully handing a thick stack of documents to Zhou Zikeng. Brother Zhou, this is all the misdeeds of that Lu Jingren, each and every one of them, all with witness testimony. Zhou Zisheng took the dossier, casually flipped through 2 pages, and a cold smile curved at the corner of his mouth. Brother Zhang handles matters, naturally, I can rest assured. He put away the dossier, a trace of barely perceptible killing intent flashing in his eyes. Tomorrow at morning court, Crown Prince will personally recommend several talented scholars from humble backgrounds to His Majesty. This thing can serve perfectly as a congratulatory gift for that young Master Lu. I placed all my bets on a dog and a letter without any evidence for the entire day after that. I was restless and uneasy, even making several wrong stitches with the silk thread on my embroidery frame. I didn't know whether a Sai could smoothly leave the manor, didn't know whether a Wu could deliver the letter to that noble person, and even less knew whether that noble person would believe the one-sided words of someone they'd never met. Every step was like treading on thin ice. Until the evening of the second day, the manor exploded into chaos. I heard father's furious roar from the front courtyard, and brother's painful muffled groans, interspersed with the loud crash of shattering porcelain. Soon, old Lady Li, using the excuse of delivering dinner, slipped in frantically. Her face was full of terror, her voice extremely low. "Miss, something terrible has happened. Young master was beaten with the court rod at Palace Gate. If not for the Marquis desperately pleading for mercy, he would have been beaten half to death." My heart tightened. The hand holding my chopsticks trembled slightly, but I feigned confusion on my face. "Why, what did brother do wrong?" "I heard it was slandering court officials," Granny Lig said with lingering fear. "This morning at court, His Highness the Crown Prince recommended several talented individuals, and young Master Lu was among them. But just as the Crown Prince finished speaking, Lord Zhou Zisheng presented evidence, saying young Master Lu had poor character and was fishing for fame. Who knew?" She swallowed and continued. "Who knew His Majesty would fly into a rage on the spot, saying that evidence was pure fabrication. He also said he had personally witnessed young Master Lu's talent and character, and would not tolerate slander from petty people. His Majesty ordered a thorough investigation, which revealed that the evidence was forged by the young master in collusion with Lord Zhou. Lord Zhou was fined a year's salary and ordered to reflect behind closed doors. The young master is young, so His Majesty, for the sake of Marquis Manor, gave him a lighter punishment. 20 strokes of the court rod as a warning to others. My heart, upon hearing His Majesty had personally witnessed, fell heavily to the ground. I won. I bet right. That mysterious benefactor had far more power than I imagined. He not only protected Lu Jingren, but could even make his name reach the heavens directly. My father and brother, carrying memories from their previous life, thought they were the chess players, never expecting that on this board there was already a big shot they could never shake. Their rebirth in the face of absolute imperial power became nothing but a huge joke. I lowered my head, using my sleeve to cover that trace of cold smile at the corner of my mouth that I just couldn't hide. Father and mother quickly rushed into my room. Father Zhang Yunshan's eyes were bloodshot red, like an enraged lion, while Mother Lu behind him was sobbing and wailing, her face covered in tear stains. "Was it you?" Father pointed at my nose and interrogated me sternly as soon as he entered. Was it you who leaked the information? Besides you, who else would help that bastard? Brother Jang Yun-jo was being supported by 2 servants, his face pale as paper, his forehead covered in cold sweat. He leaned against the doorframe, looking at me with eyes full of resentment and confusion. Jang Jixia, have you gone mad? For the sake of an outsider, you harmed your own brother. I stood up from the chair, staggering back 2 steps, my face showing just the right amount of panic and bewilderment. Father, mother, what are you talking about? I don't understand. My voice carried a sobbing tone, my body trembling like a leaf in the autumn wind. What happened to brother? How did he get hurt like this? My acting fooled them. Or rather, they simply couldn't believe that a weak woman confined to her chambers, without the strength to truss a chicken, could stir up storms in the imperial court. In their eyes, I was still that fool who knew nothing but crying, making scenes, and going on hunger strikes. Seeing me like this, Mother's suspicions wavered too. She stepped forward, grabbed my furious father, and said through tears, "My lord, please calm down. Jixia never steps out of the house. How could she possibly have done anything?" Father stared at me intently as if trying to see through some flaw on my face. I just cried tears of fear, shaking my head continuously. In the end, he irritably flung his sleeve and snorted angrily. Useless. All useless. What he cursed might have been his son who was nearly beaten to death, might have been himself for the failed plan, or perhaps himself from the previous life who failed to protect the whole family. After venting their fury in my room, they eventually left with exhaustion and defeat weighing on them. They couldn't figure out why the trajectory of this life had such a huge deviation from what they remembered, and I, after they left, immediately wiped away my tears. Late at night, Xiao Lian took the opportunity of pouring water to secretly slip me a note. It was new information from Ah Wu. On the note was only a name and an official title. 9th Prince, Xiao Jingheng, the current emperor's younger brother who commanded heavy troops, lived in seclusion, stayed out of factional struggles, yet was feared by everyone, the pillar of stability of the great Zhou dynasty, the noble person who took Lu Jingren away and introduced him to His Majesty was actually him. My heart instantly sank. The downfall of the Marquis Manor in my previous life was definitely not just because I married a chief grand secretary from a humble background. Behind this, it must have been entangled in the struggle for succession, entangled in the most turbulent undercurrents beneath this sea of power. And Lu Jingren, from the very beginning, was not as simple as a talented scholar from a humble family. He was the 9th Prince's man. A sigh came back on the 3rd night. It was filthy all over, as if it had crawled through countless mud pits, but its spirit was good. It skillfully squeezed through the hole in the courtyard wall, silently ran to my window and gently rubbed its head against the window frame. That familiar signal, one that only I understood. My heart leaped with wild joy, and I hastily opened the window a crack. A sigh let out a low whimper from its throat. Bringing its head closer with trembling hands, I retrieved another small bamboo tube from the hidden compartment inside its collar. Opening the bamboo tube, inside was also a strip of paper rolled extremely thin. The note bore no signature, yet it was the handwriting I knew well. Lu Jingren's calligraphy with its sharp and vigorous strokes. There were only 2 lines on it. The first line was in response to my coded message. The loquats have ripened, quietly awaiting your arrival. There is a loquat tree in the courtyard. Now it stands tall like a canopy. This is a phrase mourning a deceased wife. I used this phrase to tell him that our past childhood friendship had been buried by my own family's hands. And his reply to me, the loquats are ripe, quietly awaiting your arrival. He understood my resolve and responded to my rebirth. He told me the fruit has ripened. He is waiting for me. Waiting for this brand new Zhang Jixia who has broken free from her cage to personally pluck the fruits of victory. Or affection hasn't died, it has just been reborn in a different form, tempered through fire. And the second line completely put my mind at ease. A caged bird is not what I wish to be. Poisoned wine down the throat can also become good medicine. All is prepared, worry not. He understood the deeper meaning in my painting. He told me he too refuses to be a caged bird. The poisoned wine in my painting was meant to remind him that even those closest can harbor deadly intent. Yet he said that poisoned wine can sometimes become good medicine. He had long known of Jiang Yunzhou's schemes and turned them to his advantage, using this evidence to stage a performance before His Majesty of being framed by villains, instead gaining His Majesty's sympathy and trust. My letter was a stone thrown to test the waters, and his trap had long been laid. Between us lay high walls, conspiracies, and 2 lifetimes of grievances. Yet in this moment, we formed the most solid alliance. I held the note to the candle flame, watching it turn to ash and scatter into the incense burner. Outside the window, the moon was cool as water. I looked at my own eyes in the mirror, frighteningly bright, and slowly smiled. This play is getting more and more interesting. Brother's 20 court rod strikes and father's furious rage were just the beginning. My dear family, everything you've inflicted upon Lu Jingren and me, I will reclaim it all with interest, using what you care about most, strategic commentary. The third layer of the game, perfect synergy of mutual pursuit. The most exquisite counterkill logic. When 2 underestimated people join forces, the entire power structure gets redefined. Jiang Jixia plus Lu Jingren's combination equals dimensional reduction strike. She provides intelligence. He provides execution. She schemes in the shadows. He receives in the open. She uses her weakling identity to paralyze opponents. He uses his victim posture to gain sympathy. The reborn's third fatal mistake: they think grasping the future equals invincible. But forget, when your opponents start joining forces, your profit advantage becomes an information cocoon, because you can only see the ending in your memory but can't see. In this life, someone is already rewriting the rules in ways you don't understand. Brother's injuries took a full half-month to heal. During this half-month, the atmosphere in the Marquis Manor was so oppressive you could wring water from it. Father wore a gloomy expression all day, repeatedly making mistakes while handling affairs in the mansion, and was impeached by censors several times. Mother spent her days washing her face with tears, constantly muttering words like retribution and evil spawn. The advantage their rebirth brought them had turned into a boulder weighing on their hearts after that resounding slap in the face at court. They began to doubt whether the trajectory of this life had already deviated from their control. And I continued to play the role of that young lady whose heart was dead as ash, calm and docile. I recited scriptures and embroidered every day, paying no attention to the changing winds and clouds outside my window. This attitude of accepting fate actually made them gradually relax their surveillance of me. After all, what kind of trouble could a daughter who was already ruined stir up? Granny Lee became the most reliable channel for my contact with the outside world. She was illiterate and could only rely on word of mouth, which made it even safer. From her fragmented descriptions, I learned that after Lu Jingren showed his face at court, he was exceptionally promoted by His Majesty and entered the Hanlin Academy. Although he was just a minor compiler, he was close to the Emperor with limitless prospects ahead. The 9th Prince, Xiao Jingheng, still kept a low profile, as if everything at court had nothing to do with him. And my dear brother Jiang Yunzhou, after recovering from his injuries, not only failed to learn his lesson but became even more sinister. He seemed to attribute all his failures to Lu Jingren's sorcery. He was convinced that Lu Jingren was the nemesis of Marquis Manor and had to be eliminated. On this day, Granny Lai brought me another piece of news. Miss Young Master, he has been mixing with that Lord Zhou again. Her expression was tense. Her voice kept extremely low. This old servant heard from the kitchen staff that young master has been frequently running to Zuixian Tower outside the city lately, and has withdrawn a large sum of silver from the household. Zuixian Tower, my brow twitched. That wasn't any respectable tavern, but a famous money pit in the capital, a place where all sorts mingled, a breeding ground for all kinds of shady dealings. What was brother doing there? I immediately had Granny Lee pass word to a Wu, telling him to make sure to find out clearly what Jiang Yunzhou was up to. 3 days later, Ah Wu's message came back and its contents chilled me to the bone. Jiang Yunzhou and Josie Cheng had bribed a desperate criminal at Zuxian Tower, preparing to stage an accident. They planned to use a runaway carriage on Lu Jingren's route home from work to run him over and kill him. This way, they could both eliminate a major threat and disguise it as an accident, keeping themselves completely clean. What a vicious scheme. I clutched the scrap of cloth with the message written on it, my fingertips ice cold. In my previous life, they must have done exactly this, step by step forcing Lu Jingren into a corner, which led to his later mad revenge. In this life, I absolutely won't let the tragedy repeat itself. I needed an east wind that could completely overturn this murderous plot and make it backfire on them. I looked out the window, my gaze falling on the patrolling capital guards not far away. Got it. I had Xiaolian find a way to gather information about the family affairs of Zhao Wuji, the commander of the capital guard. Zhao Wuji was a man of iron principles, impervious to bribes or favors, famously known in the capital as the living king of hell. Ordinary money and personal connections couldn't move him at all. But a Wu's intelligence network quickly brought back a report. Zhao Wuji had an only son, just 7 years old, who had been frail since childhood. Despite searching far and wide for renowned physicians to no avail, his old illness had recently relapsed, a high fever that wouldn't break. Even the imperial physicians from the palace were at their wits' end. This was my east wind. I wrote a letter containing only a single prescription. This prescription was something I'd seen as a child in a rare medical text. It specifically treated infantile convulsive fever, using extremely obscure medicinal ingredients that few in the world knew about. In my previous life, a distant cousin of mine had suffered from a similar illness and had his life saved by this very formula. I had a Wu find a way to deliver the prescription along with an anonymous letter into Zhao Wuji's hands before tonight. No matter what. In the letter, I didn't mention Zhang Yunzhou's poisonous scheme. I only told him that tomorrow at the hour of Shen, at the intersection of Duke Avenue and Qinglong Alley, a surprise would be waiting for him. Whether to save his son's life or miss out on a meritorious achievement, I left the choice to him. After finishing all this, I had Xiaolian handle another matter. Go to the Wang family and tell them that I've come around and am willing to accept the marriage arrangement with the Wang family's second young master. But before that, I want to meet him once, I said to the mirror, smoothing my hair at the temples, my tone calm. Xiaolian was shocked. Miss Yu, how could you? Do as I say, I interrupted her, my gaze brooking no argument. Tell Madame Wang that we'll meet tomorrow at the 3rd quarter of the hour of the goat, at the city's finest tea house, Tranquil Heart Pavilion. Though Xiaolian was full of confusion, she still went to carry out the order. When Mother learned of this news, she was overjoyed. She thought I had finally yielded to reality and stopped chasing unrealistic dreams. She immediately took charge of the preparations herself, getting new clothes ready for me and selecting jewelry, afraid I might lose face in front of the Wang family. Everyone in the Marquis' manor thought I had resigned myself to fate. None of them knew that the net I had laid was already quietly tightening. Tomorrow, the 3rd quarter of the hour of the goat, Tranquil Heart Pavilion. Tomorrow, the hour of the monkey, Duke Avenue. 2 seemingly unrelated times and places would become the fuse that ignites everything. The next day, I put on the dress Mother had carefully prepared for me and applied exquisite makeup. The person in the bronze mirror had a gentle complexion and compliant eyes, showing not the slightest ripple of emotion. Mother looked at me with satisfaction, as if admiring a commodity about to be sold for a good price. This is what a daughter of my Marquis' manor should be like. She straightened my collar and instructed. When you meet young Master Wang, smile more, speak nicely, understand? I nodded obediently. Daughter understands. The carriage took me to Jingxin Pavilion. The Wang family mother and son were already waiting in the private room. That young Master Wang looked quite fair-skinned, but his eyes were frivolous, and his gaze carried an appraising quality that made me feel disgusted. I forced myself to endure the discomfort and dealt with them perfunctorily. I deliberately acted somewhat shy, always slow to respond, only answering when asked. Madame Wang was clearly getting impatient, but considering my status as a young lady of the Marquis' manor, she still reluctantly maintained a smile. Time passed minute by minute. While dealing with them, I silently counted the time in my mind. 3 quarters past the hour of the horse, beginning of the hour of the rooster, 1 quarter past the hour of the rooster. It was almost the hour of the monkey. I picked up my teacup, pretending to drink tea, but my hand accidentally trembled. A cup of scalding tea water, neither too far left nor right, spilled entirely onto young Master Wang's robe. He jumped up with an ow, pointing at me angrily. What are you doing? Are you blind? Madame Wang's expression also changed, shrilly saying, Miss Jiang, what is the meaning of this? I hurriedly stood up, holding a handkerchief, apologizing in a flustered manner. I am sorry, young Master Wang. I didn't mean to. While apologizing, I pretended to help him wipe it off, but stumbled and crashed straight into him. The private room instantly descended into chaos, and at almost the same moment, several miles away on Duke Avenue, the carriage Lu Jingren was riding in was slowly passing the street corner. Suddenly, a cart loaded with lumber came charging out like mad from a side alley, crashing straight toward his carriage. In the blink of an eye, just as the two vehicles were about to collide, dozens of armored Capitol guards wielding sharp blades burst out from the tea houses and taverns on both sides of the street. Like divine soldiers descending from heaven, they instantly stopped the runaway cart. The desperate driver saw things going south, abandoned the cart and tried to flee, but was immediately tackled to the ground by the swarming Capitol guards. All this happened so fast that the pedestrians on the street hadn't even reacted yet. In another carriage not far away, my dear brother Jiang Yunzhou and Zhou Zicheng were watching this sudden scene in terror through the gap in the carriage curtain. How could there be Capitol guards? Jiang Yunzhou's face was deathly pale, his whole body trembling. Zhou Zicheng's expression was also extremely grim as he barked, Go now! But it was already too late. Zhao Wuji, commander of the Capitol Guard, clad in full armor with a face as dark as water, rode out from the crowd on his horse. His gaze was as sharp as a hawk's, sweeping across the chaotic scene before finally settling on the carriage where Jiang Yunzhou and Zhou Zicheng were hiding. Seize them. With a single command, the Capitol Guard instantly surrounded the carriage. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. And I, this cicada far away in the tea house, slowly straightened up when I heard the commotion and the sound of soldiers and armor from the street. The Wang family mother and son were still cursing at me relentlessly. Looking at them, I revealed today's first and only smile from the heart. Madame Wang, young Master Wang. My voice wasn't loud, yet it clearly drowned out their cursing. This marriage arrangement, I think, let's just forget it. Having said that, I paid no more attention to their stunned expressions, turned around and walked out of the private room leisurely. The show should come to an end. When I returned to Marquis Manor, the household was already in complete chaos. The servants and maids were whispering to each other, their faces full of panic. Seeing me return, as if they'd seen a ghost, they all scattered to avoid me. The front hall was empty except for Mother Liu, sitting listlessly in the main seat, her hair bun askew, her makeup smeared halfway down her face. The usually dignified and noble Marchioness now looked as disheveled as a madwoman. She saw me, and in those hollow eyes, 2 clusters of venomous flames instantly ignited. She lunged at me, grabbing my wrist with a force so strong it felt like she wanted to crush my bones. It is you. You did this, didn't you? She shrieked hoarsely, her nails digging deep into my flesh. You wretched thing, for the sake of an outsider, you sent your own brother to prison. How can you be so heartless? I let her hold on, my face showing just the right amount of confusion and innocence. But my voice was cold, without a trace of warmth. Mother, what are you talking about? I just came back from the meditation pavilion, attending the banquet you personally arranged. Whatever happened to brother? What does it have to do with me? My calmness formed a stark contrast with her madness. My words were like a bucket of cold water, jolting her awake. That is right. I had a perfect alibi. It was she who personally sent me away, creating this proof for me. She let go, staggering backward, looking at me in disbelief, muttering under her breath, Impossible. Impossible. She didn't want to believe, and didn't dare to believe, that the daughter who seemed so obedient and docile in her eyes would lay such an inescapable trap. Just then, Father Jiang Yuanshan returned from outside. He seemed to have aged 10 years overnight, his official hat askew, his court robes full of wrinkles, his entire being emanating an air of decayed lifelessness. He didn't even glance at me, walked straight to the chair, and sat down heavily, as if all the strength had been drained from his body. Mother rushed over, grabbed his arm, and asked urgently, My lord, how did it go? Where is Yunzhou? Father closed his eyes, and after a long while finally said in an extremely hoarse voice, thrown into the heavenly prison. Heavenly prison. Mother's eyes rolled back and she fainted on the spot. Father didn't go to support her. He just opened his eyes and stared at me with the look one gives a stranger, no, an enemy, attempting to murder a court official in broad daylight, with solid evidence, caught red-handed. He spoke word by word, as if squeezing the sentence through his teeth. "Jiang Jixia, what a vicious heart you have." He didn't ask, he simply passed judgment. At this point, there was no meaning left in putting on an act. I slowly smiled until tears nearly came out. Vicious, I met his murderous gaze and asked softly in return, "Compared to you people who would destroy my lifelong happiness for some illusory dream, who is really more vicious?" My words were like a resounding slap striking Father hard across the face. His face turned from red to blue, then from blue to white, and finally, all emotions transformed into a towering murderous intent. "You wretched thing," he roared, grabbed the teacup from the table, and hurled it viciously at me. I didn't dodge. Scalding tea and shattered porcelain splashed onto my forehead together, cutting open a bloody gash as blood slowly trickled down my cheek. It hurt, but how could this pain compare to even 1/10,000th of my heartbreak? "Even now you still refuse to repent." Father pointed at me, trembling with rage. "You've ruined your brother, which means you've ruined our entire Marquis Manor. You've brought the calamity from our past life upon us early." "Did I bring it upon us?" I wiped the blood from my face and asked back with a cold laugh. "If you hadn't pressed me at every turn, if brother hadn't been hell-bent on driving someone to death, how would today's disaster have come to pass? You only remember the Marquis Manor's fate from our past life, but you've forgotten to think about what the cause of that fate actually was." My questioning left them speechless. Yes, they only remembered that Lu Jingren became the Grand Secretary and the Marquis Manor was executed in its entirety. But they never thought about what they had actually done to Lu Jingren before that. Given my brother's temperament and their attitude toward me in our past life, their suppression and humiliation of Lu Jingren was probably even worse than in this life. So the cause reaped the effect. Karma never fails. They pushed all the blame onto me, merely seeking an excuse for their own selfishness and stupidity. This confrontation ended in complete rupture. When Mother woke up and saw the wound on my forehead, there wasn't a trace of heartache in her eyes, only bone-deep hatred. Grandmother, who had been unconscious for so long, was also disturbed. She leaned on her cane, pointed at me, and cursed viciously, saying I was a calamity who invited the wolf into the house. An evil ghost who came to collect debts. The way they looked at me was no longer as a daughter, a granddaughter, but as a demon that must be suppressed. That night I was taken away from my boudoir. They locked me in the most remote, most desolate abandoned courtyard in the mansion Tingyu Pavilion. This was once where my aunt who died young had lived, and it had been abandoned ever since. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, the house covered in cobwebs, filled with the stench of decay and despair. Father personally used a large lock to secure the door. "From this day on you will die here and atone for what you've done." Through the door he passed his final judgment on me. This time there were no guards at the door, no 3 meals a day. They truly wanted to leave me to fend for myself until death. Listening to the sound of their retreating footsteps, I leaned against the cold door panel and slowly slid down. I looked at the desolate crescent moon outside the window, feeling no fear in my heart, only a liberating sense of calm. I had personally severed the last thread of blood kinship and driven myself into a dead end. But at the same time, I had also opened a door for someone else to march straight in. "Brother Jingren, it is your move now." I was locked up in Tingyu Pavilion for 3 days. During those 3 days, no one came to check on me. I relied on the rainwater, accumulated in a broken water vat in the room, to barely survive. My body grew weaker and weaker, and my consciousness began to blur. I curled up in the corner, quietly waiting. I knew they wouldn't let me die before I completely lost my value. My life was still useful to them. Sure enough, on the 3rd night, that heavy lock was opened. The one who came in was Mother, Lady Liu. She looked even more haggard than me. In just a few days, she had become unrecognizable. She heavily placed a food box on the ground. Inside were a few steamed buns that had already gone cold. "Eat." Her voice was dry and hoarse without a trace of emotion. I didn't move. She looked at me, a flash of complex emotions in her eyes. Hatred, resentment, but more than anything, a powerless despair. His Majesty has issued an edict. She slowly began, Jung Yun-jo colluding with the Crown Prince's study companion, attempting to harm court officials, heinous crimes, sentenced to execution after autumn. Zhou Zicheng stripped of office and investigated, never to be employed again. Marquis Manor of Ding'an failed in educating their son, fined 3 years' salary, confined for reflection. My heart didn't waver in the slightest. This outcome was within my expectations all along. Mother looked at my face, dead as still water, and suddenly let out a shrill laugh. Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Zhang Jixia, what is your heart made of? That is your own brother. I slowly raised my head, looked at her, and said softly, when he wanted to kill brother Jingren, did he ever think that he was also my future husband? One sentence left her speechless. Unable to say another word, she staggered away, as if staying even a moment longer would freeze her from the cold aura emanating from me. The door was locked again, but I knew that in this game Marquis Manor had already lost completely. 2 days later, a sudden commotion came from outside. The heavy courtyard gate of Tingyu Pavilion was kicked open from the outside. I struggled to look out through the crack in the window and saw a group of guards in palace uniform pouring in, led by a eunuch with a stern expression. Father and mother followed behind, their faces deathly pale, trembling with fear. Eunuch Chen, my daughter has gone mad. That is why she is locked up here, to prevent her from hurting people. Father was still futilely explaining, but the eunuch paid him no attention at all, walked straight to my door, and with a wave of his hand, 2 guards immediately stepped forward and smashed the lock open in a few strikes. The door opened, blinding sunlight poured in, and I instinctively raised my hand to shield my eyes. Eunuch Chen walked up to me, flicked his whisk, his shrill voice carrying undeniable authority. By order of the 9th Prince, here to escort Miss Jiang out of the manor. He paused, his gaze sweeping over my dishevelled appearance, then coldly glanced at my horrified parents. By order of the Prince, the Marquis Manor has a heart like a viper, disregarding human ethics, and is unfit to be Miss Jiang's parents. From this day forward, Miss Jiang and the Marquis Manor sever all ties of gratitude and obligation with no further connection. After speaking, he bowed respectfully toward me. Miss Jiang, please, Lord Lu is waiting for you outside. Supporting myself against the doorframe, I walked step by step out of this prison that had confined me for days. The sunlight was blinding, yet I refused to close my eyes. I wanted to deeply etch this long-lost brightness into my eyes, brand it upon my heart. Outside the courtyard gate stood a low-key yet elegant ebony carriage. Beside the carriage stood a familiar figure. It was Lu Jingren. He still wore his blue scholar's robe, but carried more composure and sharpness than before. Between his refined brows, the naivety of a poor scholar had faded, replaced by the depth of one who strategizes with mastery. Seeing me emerge, all his calm and restraint instantly crumbled. He strode forward quickly, his gaze sweeping over the scar on my forehead, the stains on my clothes as turbulent waves surged in his eyes, towering fury, and heartache seared into his very bones. He said nothing, only removed the plain-coloured cloak from his own body, still warm with his body heat, and wrapped me from head to toe, tightly and completely warmth, instantly dispelling the cold gloom that had plagued me for days. I've come to get you. His voice, cutting through my wildly beating heart, reached my ears clearly, carrying a calming power that steadied the soul. I nodded, burying my face in his warm cloak, greedily breathing in that familiar ink fragrance that put me at ease. I knew you would come. Once in the carriage, I was shielded from my parents' desperate and venomous gazes behind me. Inside the carriage, calming incense burned. Lu Jingren personally poured me a cup of hot tea, watching me take small sips before slowly beginning to speak. The 9th Prince is someone I happened to save many years ago. Back then he was traveling incognito and severely injured. I brought him back and cared for him for over half a month. He didn't hide anything from me, laying it all out. Grateful for my kindness and impressed by my talents, he has been secretly supporting me ever since, treating me as a trusted confidant. I listened quietly. So that is it. He'd had such a powerful backer all along. That day when your brother threw me out of the estate, it was the prince's people who took me in. He looked at me, his eyes full of lingering fear. If not for your letter arriving in time, I would have nearly fallen into their trap. Jixia, these past days have been hard on you. I shook my head. Compared to the dangers you faced, what I went through is nothing. I told him everything in detail. How I guessed they were reborn from the old woman's delirious ramblings, and how I step by step exploited their arrogant psychology to set up a series of traps. He listened with his heart pounding, gripping my hand tighter and tighter. They thought that holding the script of their previous life meant they could do whatever they wanted. I looked at him, my gaze clear and resolute. But they didn't know that while the script can be replayed, human nature never changes. Their selfish and callous nature was the real reason for their downfall. Lu Jingren pulled me into his embrace, his chin gently resting on the top of my head, sighing, "Jixia, you've grown up." Yes, grown up. The moment I was pushed into the abyss by my closest kin, that innocent and carefree Jiang Jixia had already died. The one living now is the reborn from ashes, Nuhuru Jixia. Lu Jingren settled me in a separate residence, under the 9th prince's name. This place was serene and elegant, heavily guarded, the safest place in the capital. I bathed and changed into clean clothes, looking at the faint scar on my forehead in the mirror, my heart completely calm. This was my medal of breaking ties with the past. That evening, Lu Jingren came again. He brought a sealed dossier, his expression unprecedentedly grave. "Jixia, regarding the fate of Marquis Manor in the previous life, I think you should know the truth." He pushed the dossier in front of me. I hesitated for a moment, but still reached out to open it. The contents of the case file left me ice cold all over, as if I'd fallen into a frozen abyss. It turned out that in my previous life, the downfall of the Marquis Manor wasn't because I married Lu Jingren. It was because my father, Marquis Dingan Jiangyuan Shan, colluded with the Crown Prince, who had been deposed at the time, plotting rebellion. They secretly transported weapons and embezzled military funds, leading to a crushing defeat at the borderlands where 30,000 soldiers were buried in the sands. And at that time, Lu Jingren, who had just been promoted to Grand Secretary, received his first assignment, to thoroughly investigate this case. He followed the trail and traced it back to the Marquis Manor. On one side was the Emperor's command and the law of the land, on the other was his wife's family. The case file recorded that he had secretly warned them multiple times, giving my father chances to voluntarily surrender military authority and retire to the countryside, which would have spared the entire family. But my father, blinded by greed and ambition, not only refused to listen, but thought Lu Jingren was trying to seize power for himself. He intensified his humiliation and suppression of that so-called brother of mine, trying to force him into submission. In the end, on the day of the rebellion, they were caught red-handed with irrefutable evidence. His Majesty was furious and ordered the execution of the entire family. And before the execution, it was Lu Jingren who knelt before His Majesty for a day and a night, staking his official position and his life, who finally managed to save me. He sent me out of the capital city, gave me a new identity, and let me live out the rest of my life in peace. And he himself, because of harboring the family of a criminal official, was impeached by the censor, his career path blocked, living his entire life in guilt and pain. My family members, in their resentment-filled memories of rebirth, only remember the downfall of the Marquis Manor, only remember that it was Lu Jingren who personally sent them to the guillotine. But they deliberately, or rather selfishly, forgot the heinous crimes they committed, forgot the way out Lu Jingren had given them, and even more so forgot that he risked his life to protect me. They weren't wrongfully executed. They got what they deserved. Their so-called rebirth wasn't to save me, but only to escape the punishment they deserved in their past life, so they could continue enjoying in this life the wealth and glory stained with blood. I slowly closed the case file, tears sliding from the corners of my eyes. One drop, for the self in the past life who was kept in the dark and died alone. One drop, for him in the past life who bore everything and loved me deeply. After autumn, my brother Jiang Yunzhou was executed. Father Jiang Yunshan, due to failing to properly educate his son and being implicated in old cases from years ago, was stripped of his marquis title, reduced to commoner status, and exiled 3,000 li together with mother, never to return to the capital. That once glorious Dingenmarki Manor was sealed by the court, cold official seals pasted on the vermilion lacquered gates. I heard that on the day grandmother learned the news, she couldn't catch her breath, suffered a stroke and collapsed, and passed away within a few days. And that old yellow dog Asai, who once barked at me incessantly, actually tracked me down by scent all the way to the separate courtyard where I was staying after the Marquis Manor was sealed. It lay at the courtyard gate, no longer barking, just whimpering, looking at me pitifully with those cloudy eyes. In the end, it is just a beast. The so-called past life memories couldn't overcome its instinctive craving for warmth and food in this moment. I had someone lead it inside and fed it some meat and bones. From then on, it stayed by my side, docile as a cat. The following spring, Lu Jingren and I got married. There was no 10-mile bridal procession, no crowds of guests. Only the 9th prince as the officiant, and a few friends who genuinely wished us well. The wedding was simple yet warm. I wore the wedding dress he had personally designed and rushed to make for me. Embroidered in gold thread was no longer a twin lotus, but a loquat tree growing freely toward the morning sun. He said that what we had between us had long transcended romantic love. We were confidants who entrusted our lives to each other, comrades who fought side by side. After the wedding, we moved into his own residence. In the courtyard, he personally planted a small loquat sapling. I would often sit under the tree, watching him handle official business. Occasionally, he'd look up and smile at me gently, his gaze tender, the years peaceful and good. That absurd rebirth was like a nightmare. My family members holding the perfect opportunity to start over due to the greed and selfishness in their hearts, played a great hand terribly, ultimately ending up in an even more miserable fate than the previous life. Until their deaths, they never understood that what truly determines fate has never been some prophetic memory. But the choice is rooted deep within one's heart. Another spring has come. The loquat tree in the courtyard has grown quite a bit taller, sprouting tender green buds swaying gently in the spring breeze. Lu Jingren embraced me from behind, resting his chin in the hollow of my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" I pointed at that vibrant little tree and said with a smile, "I am thinking when it grows up, when it is tall and canopy-like, our child should be able to play under the tree too." He held my hand, our fingers interlaced, the smile in his eyes even more tender than the spring scenery filling the garden. "Yes, the shadows of the past have long since dispersed. What belongs to us is a brand new future illuminated by sunlight. The loquats have ripened, the flowers are in full bloom, and I have finally waited for my rebirth strategic review, endgame. The perfect transformation from pawn to player, the most shocking comeback. When everyone thought you were just a pawn, you had already become the player. Zhang Jixia plus Lu Jingren's ultimate victory. They didn't rely on the cheating advantage of rebirth. They relied on true wisdom, courage, and persistence. They used the clumsiest method, step by step, and reached the highest point. The ultimate irony of the reborn. They thought mastering the future equals invincibility, but didn't know that what truly changes fate has never been what you know, but what you are willing to sacrifice for it. The Zhang Yuanshan family traded foresight for temporary advantage, but due to greed and stupidity, personally destroyed everything, while Zhang Jixia and Lu Jingren, with blood and tears, proved the simplest truth: fate has never been meant to be foreseen, but to be created.